Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am sorry for the bit of the delay on our side. My name is Marina, and I'd like to welcome all of you to the post-COVID-19 strategic renewal and realignment surgeries. This is a webinar that is brought to you by Zimbabwe in partnership with Connected Leadership. If I can maybe just quickly get an indication if you guys can all hear me. From our participants' end, if I can maybe just quickly get an indication, you will have a chat box on your right-hand side that is open to everyone to chat with us. It seems that I'm not getting any, Nisha has responded to say that she can hear. That's good to see. If I can maybe just have an indication from one or two more people. I see we have Vivian on the line. We have Vandu on as well. Vivian, there you are. We've got Oliver, Paddington, Lazarus. If you guys can, guys, thank you so very much. I really appreciate it. So without further ado, let's quickly get into a few things. Just a few pre-starting tips. Now that we know that everybody's audio settings is working, we might just want to recommend that if it's possible to just close a couple of the tabs on your browser. I know we all like to have a few things running at the same time, but for the interest of Wi-Fi and all of that, let's try and keep the bandwidth to this particular browser. I can see that all of you have now figured out how to use the chat box, which is fantastic. These chats are open to everyone, so I can see them. Our two presenters that you should be able to see on camera, they can see the chat, so we will all be able to interact with each other today. Oh, that's fantastic. Just in terms of questions and comments, you guys are, of course, by all means, you're welcome to type away. As our presenters are speaking today, you can ask them questions. If they don't respond to you immediately, I will flag it for them so that they can get back to you during our Q&A time. During the session, our presenters will refer to some handouts that we will give to you. These handouts will be made available as we go through the session, and you are welcome to download and read and view these handouts at your own leisure. Should you have any challenges with the download, you will be able to send us an email after the session, and our team will be more than welcome to share it with you. So let's quickly introduce you to our presenters. Gentlemen, if I can just quickly get an indication that you both can hear me. Just to tell you that you're on screen here with my side. Ernest, if we're having a bit of a challenge, do you think maybe we can try changing your microphone and your earphones? Maybe if we take those out, it might be a bit easier. I can see, okay. So let me start by introducing you to Professor Stein Hekrit. He's the gentleman there on your right-hand side, white t-shirt. Professor Stein Hekrit is the CEO of Platform for Connected Leadership, and I'll give you a quick breakdown of Platform for Connected Leadership, or PCL as we'd like to call it, in just a bit. Professor Stein is also a professor in strategy. He is a Harvard Business Moderator. He is an HBR author, and also an author of various books and articles in his own right as an academic. But the parts that a lot of people don't always know is that Professor Stein is also my business partner in Platform for Connected Leadership. We have another partner here in the country that hopefully we will be able to introduce to you at another occasion. Professor Stein has also been a great friend and mentor to me. I have known him for over 12 years now, that we have worked together across various countries and continents. So, Professor, welcome, and thank you so very much for taking the time today to speak to everyone. Then just to quickly introduce you as well to Professor Kadembo, unfortunately we seem to have a bit of a sound issue. I am asking him to just remove his earphones. If you hear me typing, that's just what is happening on my side. So I do apologize. I do apologize for the bit of a technical challenge that we are having. So for Professor Kadembo, I have not known him quite as long as I have Professor Stein. I met him about a month ago by chance when he was having a conversation with Professor Stein. But since then, we have taken on quite the exciting journey with Professor Kadembo, and we have found him to be quite the advocate of PCL. So we are quite excited to be in a connection with him as well. Professor Kadembo has a range of qualifications, including his PhD in story branding, and he is also an author of multiple books. He has been involved in various projects, both in Zimbabwe and in the UK. So, Professor, thank you so very much as well for your time today and for speaking to everyone. Just a quick outline on Platform for Connected Leadership. So we are a learning and development company. We are registered in the UAE, but that is just our technical information. Platform for Connected Leadership was very much a dream that came into reality between three friends that ended up being business partners as well here in the UAE. And our biggest strive and passion is the drive that we have to help people inspire themselves and find their own greatness, and just to make a difference in people's lives. So I'm not going to go too deep into who the company is. Professor Stein will be taking you through everything that we do. He'll be taking you through the framework, so you will have all of the information firsthand from the author himself. Professor Kadembo, if I can just quickly, do you have audio on your side?
No, I don't think he has yet.
Okay, let me quickly see if I can. I'm quickly going to see if I can change his settings.
If you want to, I can start with my section along, and then maybe you can just mute and then phone Ernest and try and assist him.
That'll be great. Thank you so much.
All right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so from my side, a warm welcome. Thank you very much. Today we are talking about, not just COVID itself, but also what are the things that we can do to help us to regenerate and reignite the economic activities that most of our companies have been struggling with quite a lot since COVID has started. And it's my privilege to take you through. I'm going to take about 20 minutes of your time just to elaborate on some of the challenges we have right now, and then also share with you some of the things that we do here at Platform for Connected Leadership. Myself and Ernest, we are colleagues, friends. He's part of our circle of expertise and of experts that we use in terms of the programs that we do run on Platform for Connected Leadership, and that is our connection. We also both come from the African continent. Myself from South Africa, and Ernest from Zim, as we all know. So we in that respect, we are neighbors, and we're doing some exciting things together in different parts of the world. So before I do continue with my part, can I just again check, seeing that we have some technical difficulties? If you can hear me, please just type yes in the chat box very quickly, and then I'm going to take you through what I have prepared for you this afternoon. All right, great. Okay, excellent. Right, so what we're talking about is we're talking about preparing leadership. We talk about the new framework. I'm going to tell you what that framework is in the new world. Now, before we do that, we just have to take a little bit of a step back and reflect on why it is that we think the way in which we think about strategy. Where does our thought paradigm come from, and why is it that when things are disrupted, it's so difficult for us to deal with that disruption? If you take something like strategic leadership, for instance, and you go back to the 1950s, where strategic leadership really became very strong in organizations, it was almost as if after World War II, the preferred style of leadership was a kind of a general-like style. You would look at a landscape, your market territory that you want to invade. The civilians would be the market, the consumers that you want to win over to your product. The enemy would be the competition. So it was this kind of a general-like style strategic leadership that dominated the post-Second World War era. And in that time, we had the creation of various frameworks that would help business leaders to navigate their strategy through a specific business environment. SWOT, most of you know that, where I look at my strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You take another one, which is PEST, that came in the late 1960s by Aquila, where I look at the environment as politics, economy, social trend changes, and technology. Porter's 5 forces that came towards the end of the 1970s. All of these frameworks are very, very well known. I'm sure that most of you have used it before or have come across them. But the important thing is for us to understand is that post the Second World War, up until about the 1980s, the kind of frameworks that we used to make sense of the world were these segmented and categorized frameworks. Then fast forward another 10 years with the fall of the Berlin Wall and the introduction of the internet, we found that the world became much more complex. We moved into the third and the fourth industrial revolutions, with everything being connected to everything. So there was this shift from thinking in categories, in stereotypes, in silos, to thinking much more connected in terms of holistically looking at a business landscape. And what has happened in the process is it became very, very difficult for us to think in what we call an unordered state. So we know that things are complex. We know it's disrupted. We know that with COVID at the moment, it's a little bit chaotic. And of course, the question is, why is that so difficult? What is it that we are struggling with? Well, we're going to play a little game, okay? Just now, I'm going to ask Marina to put a poll onto the screen. You'll have an option to click or to fill in some numbers on this poll. And the reason why we're going to play this game is I want to try and illustrate to you that the reason why we're struggling with something like COVID or Corona or whatever, any sort of disruption, is because our thinking ability, the way in which we think, how we are comfortable to think, our thinking ability is guided by what appears to be more comfortable for us. Let me explain what I mean, okay? So be ready for the game. The next slide will contain numbers, random numbers. And what I want you to do is I want you to find the 1, and then from the 1, sequentially see whether you can find the 2, find the 3, find the 4, and see how high you can find numbers at. So let's say the highest number that you get is 6, then that is where you stop. You're going to have 10 seconds to play this game, okay? So if you are ready, Marina, you are ready with the poll. Just give me a heads up if you are ready with the poll. Sorry, I know Marina is busy with Ernest, so I just need to double check that she...
I am ready to go ahead with the poll.
All right, okay, people. So here comes the slide. Find the 1 and see how high you can count. You have 10 seconds. Okay, Marina, if you can put the poll up for us, please. And then, ladies and gentlemen, I want you'll see you either manage to count up to 5, which is the first option, or you counted up to between 5 and 10, or you manage to count higher. If you can just indicate in those 3 how high you managed to count. Okay, so I got 6 answers so far. If everybody can give me an indication. There we go. Got 9 answers. Ten answers. All right. Now, what you will see is most of you manage to only count to about 1 to 5, okay, which is quite normal because the numbers are random and it's chaotic, it's complex, it's out there, okay, there's no structure. Now, we're going to do the exercise again. This time, I'm going to place a structure, a framework, a grid over the numbers. I want you to do exactly the same exercise. I want you to see whether you can find the 1, then the 2, 3, 4, 5, and see how high you can count this time. Ready? Here we go. All right, stop. Marina, if you can put the new poll up for me, please. Now, I do the same. Tell me how high you got. Okay, if all of you can answer, the previous time I had 12 answers, so at least I need another 12 again. But I think if you look at the results, I only got 9 answers. I need another 3. Right, I think if you look at the results, you will quite clearly see that most of you have been able to, with the second time, count a lot higher. Now, the question, of course, is why is that? It is because our minds, our brains just function better when there's structure to something. You still had the same chaotic background. It was still random numbers. All I did is I just placed a grid on top of it. And the minute that I did that, your brain managed to see the pattern, and you very quickly figured out, if I can go back to that slide, you very quickly figured out, oh, there's the 1, 2, 3, okay, so it lies in the blocks, 4, 5, 6. You see, the minute you got the framework, your brain it's easier for your brain to make sense out of it. And that's why we say it's difficult when we have something like COVID or Corona or any other disruption, why it is so difficult for us to make sense out of it. You know, if you think back, I don't know how old you are, probably younger than what I am, but if you think back to the 1970s, I was a very young boy then. And I remember we had an oil crisis. And South Africa was impacted by the oil crisis, and we had to save fuel and drive slower. They even reduced the speed limits on the roads. But nobody really did anything about the oil crisis. The oil crisis was that supply far outweighed, demand far outweighed the supply, and it became very expensive, too expensive. It had huge negative impacts on the economy of countries worldwide, globally. But nobody really did anything about it. All they did is they waited until the prices normalized or stabilized again, and then they carried on as per normal. Why? Because as people, we don't like to deal with complexity and complex things and disruption. We want the world to be simple. That's why we have strategic models. It's very straightforward. You want to make additional profit, you've got to reduce the cost of your product as much as possible, and you've got to increase the amount of customers as much as possible. We call it scaling, and that's how you increase profit. So we have, because of this simplistic way in which we want to drive business, in which we want to drive the way in which we make sense out of the world, we have certain economic models that has postulated over the years. And that is the challenge that we have during Corona. It's not Corona. It's not how governments react or respond. It's because our minds have become lazy. And we just operate better when things are simple and structured. What this slide shows you here is there at the top, you have willingness to pay. Now, willingness to pay is if I can add value. But for me to continuously add value, I need to know the customer and have customer insights. It's much more difficult to please the customer all the time. Here at the bottom, I have the option of just reducing cost. It's much more fixed. And if I scale things, it's kind of easier to achieve. And that's part of the problem that we have. That's why people ask the question, now, how come we end up in a situation where everybody is manufacturing things in China? Well, it's not because of China. It's because of the world. I often say to people, China didn't create itself. The world created China. We wanted to go to China because a business school typically will tell you, and I know I teach for about 4 different international business schools here in Dubai. They will tell you, if you want to increase profitability, you got to reduce cost. So have your product manufactured in the cheapest possible way, cheapest possible country, and increase your market size by as much as possible. So look at 2003. China's exports total was only 438 billion. A mere 15 years later, it's 5 times that size. Why? Well, because it's easy. We go to China, we have products manufactured, it's cheaper. So what happens is all of a sudden we have a breakout, we have a virus of some sort, but because we, in terms of our economic models, have ensured that all our supplies come from one place, obviously the knock-on effect is very, very detrimental. And that's the challenge that we have here. So today we struggle and we're trying to understand this correlation between saving lives, lockdowns, making sure people don't get infected and have the possibility of dying, and livelihoods. What's the impact on the economy and how do we balance that? The thing is, what we need to try and do as individuals, and that's what this new framework that I'm talking about works with, is we need to try to become comfortable with decision-making amidst this unordered state, truly leading people through disruption, not wishing the environment away, but managing amidst the environment. Why is that important? Well, because there is no going back to normal. As a matter of fact, there's not even going forward to normal. People talk about the new normal. There is no normal awaiting us. There's only abnormal, disruption, continuous change, complexity. And you know what? That's okay. Depends on how you manage it. Depends on how you handle it. Along with one of my partners here, Dr. Wada, who is also the chairperson to our organization that Marina introduced this afternoon, we co-authored an article which we'll share with you. It's part of there you'll see the download pop up on the right-hand side, so you can download that. Just remember, it might take you to a different tab, so you have to click this tab again to come back to the webinar. But what this framework, what this article talks about is it introduces a new framework, a new way of thinking for future leadership. And we represent it through this sort of picture of the cosmos. There in the middle, you have the sun. That represents connectedness. This framework is known as the Platform for Connected Leadership Framework. And here we have the first leadership trait, which is think to change. Think differently about things. Forget about being comfortable in a zone of where things are just ordered. Get comfortable to take decisions and lead in this unordered state. Think differently about things. The second one, learn to excel, learn from one another, different cultures, diversity, different opinions. Act. Let's not just talk and plan. Let's implement. And the last one there is to inspire for greatness. Now, even though we have these 4 traits in the article, it's explained how to think differently, learn from others, act and inspire. We also have to develop them across different levels. You see there is leading self, then leading team, starts with you, then the organization, then ultimately societal leadership and world leadership. So let's quickly look at these 4 traits. Okay, so the first one is thinking. The Platform for Connected Leadership, the Connected Leadership Framework has got significant advantages. It's a framework for the future. It's based on the fusion of different thought paradigms. So there's a lot of diversity in how you look at the world, how you look at challenges. It considers this evolving paradigms. Remember, I said to you way back when in the 1950s, everything was a general style like. segmented, categorized, framed, blocked, simplified. Now it's much more systemic, where things are connected. Third and fourth industrial revolution, the Internet of Things. Everything is connected. My phone is connected to my watch, which measures my heartbeat, which tells me, the temperature of my smart fridge back at home. So that's the advantage of this framework. Why is it so important that we start with thinking? Well, because not of something that I said, but something that Einstein said. And he said that the world as we create it is a process of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking. We need to think differently about our economic models, about the social inequalities that has been brought to the forefront during COVID. We need to redesign our social models. We need to question the frameworks that we are using. We still use SWOT and PESTEL and Porter's 5 forces, but we need to question whether they still give us what we want amidst this complexity. Because some of those models are more than 60 years old. Should we still be using them? Should we not look at something else? Look for alternatives. We need to come up with plausible socioeconomic scenarios for immediate, midterm, and longer-term future. We cannot have a scenario where if I lock a country down, the more wealthy, privileged are okay. They sort of become digitally elite because they carry on with their lives and their work, and they even do more business online. But there's so many poor people that don't have that privilege, and they are crammed together in small spaces. So the chances of infection is a lot higher. And that's not a result of Corona. It's not a result of government lockdowns. It's the result of years and years and years of build-up that's based on economic systems that are unequal in terms of how they disperse the benefits thereof. So that's the first thing. We're just asking you in the article to think differently. The second one, learning from one another. Fundamentally changing the way we think about life, culture, differences, living together, and sacrifice. Learn and embrace other cultures. Why? Well, because diversity, or complexity at least, complexity is better served through diversity. You have more people looking from different angles at things, as opposed to just giving it to the experts. I often say to companies, I've been doing this for about 30 years now. I've worked with more than 120 companies in my lifetime and traveled in more than 48 different countries in the world. And I often say to companies, if you have a problem in the sales department, or if you have a problem in the production department, don't give it to that department to solve. That's why you have the problem. Give it to someone else to take a fresh look at it. Let's learn from our diversity. We really have to, in terms of Corona, as I said, today is not just about Corona. It's about getting you to think differently, getting you to learn, getting you to embrace different perspectives, utilizing and optimizing diversity almost as a competitive edge in your organization. But in terms of COVID, yes, we have to stretch the positive lessons learned from Corona. And what are these positive lessons? Well, it's the lessons that tell us that we have to relook our economic systems. What is it that we're teaching our CEOs on our MBA programs? Let's look at the next one, which is to act. Here in Dubai, we have a leader, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. And he's very famous for saying that when he started to build Dubai, Dubai is a very young city, actually, in terms of this magnificent developed photo that you see there on the slide. It's about 40 years old, not even that much, 30. But the point is, he's known for saying that he's not interested in reports. Don't give me another report on something. I want to see results. And that's what we drive in this article as well. When you, as a CEO or leader of the organization, you start with your winning aspiration when you do your strategic planning. As you can see here in this 5-step process that we use with our clients. Where will we play? How will we win there? But the important part is the top 3. Man, it's all thinking. It's the easier part. You can do this stuff with your feet on the desk or back at home while you're socializing with your friends. It's not easy to come up with what it is that you should do. What is difficult is to implement it. So where we should focus on here is at the bottom part. What processes need to be in place? What management systems and culture are required in the organization to drive implementation? To not just focus on strategy, but actually look at business model flexibility. The operating architecture, there you see it at the bottom. You see, this is a pyramid, okay? This is typically how we represent an organization. And you can see strategy is at the top. So strategy is important, but much more important is the foundation of this pyramid. The foundation is weak, the pyramid will crumble. Operations, the operational architecture is what carries the pyramid. So those are the three: thinking differently, learning from one another, and then act to achieve. In the last instance, we try to motivate leaders to inspire not just the current generation, but also the next generation. The photo that you have here, there's a video that Marina will share with you as well. It's also downloadable. And I invite you to go and look at this video. It's a beautiful story of a young boy that starts to push a very large tree trunk where the traffic has been jamming up against. And initially, everybody thinks he's an idiot. Well, he looks like an idiot because, I mean, he's not a superhero. It's never going to be possible for him to push this tree trunk out of the way. But what he does is he motivates and he inspires others. So gradually, everybody gets out of their car, and together, collectively, they move this tree trunk out of the way. Go and watch the video. That's what leadership is about. Leadership is about knowing that you have the possibility of failing when you take on a task if you had to do that on your own. So do you have the guts and the courage to take the first step? So that's what we teach through this framework. We have a number of programs that we built that's based on this framework. The whole idea is for companies to understand the correlation between this future fit leadership skills and the competitive financial sustainability, the advantage it gives your organization. But in that, considering planet and people and profit, not just profit. Through our programs, you can master the skills to progress through these 5 levels. Reflection is for self. Building relationships is for team. Disruption is for organization. Caring is for society. And sharing is for world. Just very quickly, as I see I'm running out of time, when we talk about the future fit leadership skills, there's 15 that has been identified through research. So what we typically do is we take some of them depending on what organizations need. So here's an example. This organization needed to have their executive leaders trained on tolerance of ambiguity, sense making, and resilience. And typically what we do, our training is very practical. I'm not just in academia. I've been a practicing entrepreneur now for almost 30 years. So I stand with my one foot in practice and the other one in academia. But we'll take something like tolerance for ambiguity. We'll tell people what it's all about. Typically, we will compare it to real scenarios. Like right now, we're doing a lot of this work regarding COVID, where people are struggling with, the randomness of the results of COVID. But we do give you a process. So you will always leave our interventions. This is a 9-step process of what it is that I can do to become better at tolerance for ambiguity. Sense making is another one, and I threw this one in here because here what we do, and this is also an article that you can download and read. It's just an example of how we do our teaching. Here we work with a case study. Sometimes we work with videos. Sometimes we work with real life scenarios. But here's a case study that we extracted a lot of lessons from in terms of what it is that you can do to help you to manage COVID better in the organization and in your society. Again, leaving you with a process. So that's what we do. I'm extremely grateful for this opportunity, being invited by Ernest and Vandu to talk to you. Of the 48 countries that I traveled in my lifetime, obviously much more than half of the majority has been on the African continent. I'm from the African continent, and the ethos of our organization has always been to focus on the African continent. So obviously for me to be a part of this initiative, and for my team, Marina and Dr. Wara, to be a part of this initiative, we feel very honored and much closer to home than what I do here in Dubai. Please, you are more than welcome to connect with us. And I now hand over to Professor Ernest Kadembu. Ernest, I am going to assume that you have managed to solve the challenges regarding audio, so it's over to you.
It is always, I always tell myself that after 12 years, if I can still listen to you and learn something from you, then it's probably a very good sign. So we are unfortunately experiencing a bit of a challenge to get Professor Kadembo back online. At this stage, he does show online, but he does not have any audio or visual. So if I can maybe just request the participants to give us a second or so, I'm going to try and get him online, and if not, we will see how do we progress with the rest of the afternoon.
Yeah, I think while you're struggling with that, then the participants, we have some time. We got about another 20 minutes that I can be online. So please, you're welcome to ask many questions, while we wait and try and sort out the technical issues. You're more than welcome. You can just type your question in the chat box and I'll respond to it immediately. Thank you for the compliment, Marina. Any questions?
That we have any questions at this stage, and unfortunately we are unsuccessful on getting Professor Kadembo back online. He has left us a message in the chat to just say that he is apologizing for not being able to get back online, and I as well apologize for not being able to get him back online. I do think if we do not have any questions at this stage, I would, if the participants would be so kind. Alois wants to know if you can go back to the 15 traits for leadership. Then I think they are referring to the future fit, the 15 skills.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, cool. Okay, so you're probably wondering where this comes from. So in my work, what I do for a living is I teach in strategy and leadership. I work for about 4 different business schools, international business schools here in Dubai. I currently reside in Dubai with my family, and I'm also president here at a local university in Dubai. But amongst others, I do a lot of work with Harvard Business School Publishing in the region. So I'm a Harvard Business School Publishing moderator, and I also author for, oops, somebody has taken my slide away.
Let's just go back there, Stein. It just seems that the slides are progressing as planned. So we'll just take you back to your slides. There we go. There we go.
Okay. So I do a lot of work for Harvard Business School Publishing in the region. And what we do is we also work very closely with an academy in South Africa known as the Future Fit Academy. And what they do is we draw on research from all across the globe and from these business schools and a number of intelligence agencies to try and compile what we call a Future Fit Leadership Index, which is the most prominent skills that you need, not just for now, but more specifically for the future going forward. So that's where these leadership skills come from. So typically organizations, I highlighted 3 there: tolerance of ambiguity, sense-making, change, resilience. So one of the clients that we're working with has got a specific need in those, so we'll focus on those. Then we do, online sessions or programs. It depends on what. So what is the future like for companies in terms of their going concern status? Well, the thing is, it depends a lot. What our research shows us is if companies focused on people first during COVID, in other words, they took care of their people, they have a higher likelihood and probability of surviving the pandemic. If companies focus on structure immediately, so like restructure, terminate people, cut salaries, those are the companies that's going to have a tough time going forward, because just from a leadership perspective, they didn't really exhibit a care for people. It was more about keeping the organization alive as opposed to actually caring about people. It's a fine balance to focus, on, saving lives and saving livelihoods. And we all understand the economic impetus of, I got to cut costs and I got to keep the economy or the company afloat. The question is, what did you focus on first? What was your main driver, your main concern? That's the one thing, Oliver. The second thing is, companies that managed to keep their market share during the pandemic, they also have a higher probability of surviving post-COVID when things normalize again. And that might have been at a big cost. Here in Dubai, for instance, we work with an organization. At one time, it's a grocery chain. At one time during COVID, they had to pay as much as 10 times more to get the product here, because in Dubai, we fly in between 85 and 90% of our product. But they absorbed the cost. They didn't pass it on to the customer. Why? Because they want to retain market share at all costs. And people aren't stupid. They know that you're doing these things. It's costing you more. But what was important during COVID? What was important was to have food available on shelves and not go into panic buying. And then the third one really is, those that have managed to maintain good relationships throughout the components of their supply chain. So the future, it is also dependent on what happens externally, but a lot of it can be managed internally. Is longevity a good metric for measuring leadership? Is there such a thing as poor leaders who seem to survive? That's such a good question, Cliff. Longevity, a good metric for measurement leadership? Yes, certainly. The idea is that the company eventually the organization needs to take on a culture that is self-sustainable, that outlives, as we always say, it needs to outlive the founder of the company. Then that what you've managed to do is you've managed to pass something on to the company that make people feel part of that family. They want to work in that organization. They want to keep it alive. There's trust. There's mutual respect. It's a nice place to work at. So we don't want to lose it. So definitely, the way, it's not so much the longevity, but it's the way in which you, first and foremost, it's a culture that you want to introduce in the organization. Second of all, it is a question of how successful you are with that. Is there such a thing as poor leaders who seem to survive? Yes, unfortunately there is. A leader is anybody that has got following. Because the definition of leadership is you work with your levels of influence over people to get them to do what it is that you want to do. So there are such a thing. I mean, as a matter of fact, I haven't read the article yet, but I saw about 2-3 days ago, there was an HBR article published on, why is it that bad bosses get promoted? And how is it that we end up in so many organizations where we have people that seemingly don't care about the people that work for them? How is it that they actually get promoted and get to the top? So unfortunately, yes. I like the questions, so keep them coming. We've got another 11 minutes. So I'll give you the full hour, seeing that you have gone and logged in this afternoon. Our apologies for Ernest not being able to join us, but yeah, let me give you some of my time. What we can also do, Marina, if you wanted to, I know we've got a little bit of a feedback form. Maybe you can let participants fill that out so long. And we'd love to have your feedback. I mean, if it's necessary, we can probably do another session when we get Ernest back online again at another time. Right, so you'll see there's a feedback form. So if you can maybe just click on, I know my slides are moving again.
Just quickly, yes, I have shared the feedback form. And just to let everybody know that we will definitely make sure that everything that was used today is also shared with you. You will get an email from us with the recording for today. And then any of the handouts or any further questions that you might have, you are welcome to contact us directly. The email address for our team is connect@pcllearning.com. And you are more than welcome to contact us directly for any questions that you might have or further information that you would like us to send to you. Stein, you seem to have a bit of a hiccup with your sound and video. So I'm going to take, while we try and get Stein back online, it seems we have a bit of a technological challenge today, but we do apologize for that, and we'll make sure that you get a proper recording from today. Bandhu, the story on how we started PCL, so Professor Stein tells this a lot better than I do, but like I said, I've been with him for 12 years now, and I've heard him tell his story a few times before. So Professor Stein, when he started to do some work in Sudan a few years ago, it was about 10 years ago, and back then he got into a situation that he calls a situational arrogance. He was extremely successful. We had done a lot of work together at that stage. We had completed a lot of projects together at that stage. And when Professor Stein got to Sudan, he tried to implement exactly what he had done everywhere else in the world into this company that he was working with in Sudan. And unfortunately, and I also think fortunately, he failed. He failed very badly. And the board was at a point with him where they wanted to fire him. And during this time, he got very sick, and he went to the hospital the one day in the northern Sudan area where he was. And while he was in this hospital waiting to be helped, a Sudani man came into the waiting room as well with his son, and they started to engage with Professor Stein, and they started to tell him the story about the trees in the desert, that when they grow to a certain age, they break in half, and the bottom part sort of creates a pool of water that is then captured during the rainy seasons. And he said to Professor Stein that a lot of times they would find Westerners that got lost in the desert. And when they look at the spoor of this person, you would see that this person walked around the tree trying to stay in the shade without ever knowing that there's water right behind them. So Professor Stein tells that at this point he had his Volta moment. He realized that he found himself in a country that he doesn't actually know anything about the people or the culture or the country itself. So he then went back to the board and told them that he knows what the problem is, and he has realized where they're going wrong. And he told them that he is the problem, and that he also knows the solution, which is to give him another chance. And they did. He ended up staying on for another 2 years. That's where a lot of the slides that you saw today are pictures from his own life, pictures where he ended up having meals with people, sitting on the floor, learning to eat with his hand, and sharing meals with local Sudanese people in the country. So fast forward about 10 years later, PCL was very much a dream that was built between the three partners. And we really had this sense where we just said that we don't just want to start the company for the sake of starting the company. We wanted to start the company to start to learn from others, but also to inspire greatness in other people, to help them reach their own levels of development where they realize that there is more to them than just what they do on a day-to-day in business. So that's how we started the company. We have been friends first. We became business partners later, and to this day, still I consider both of them, because they're both quite my senior, believe it or not. I consider both of my business partners to be mentors to me. So it's been quite the journey with everyone. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it seems that you are still online with just me. I have unfortunately lost both of my speakers. So at this stage, if you have any further questions, you're more than welcome to ask me. Unfortunately, when it comes to some of the business strategies, Professor Stein is the best person to speak with, but you are more than welcome to send him an email, and we will make sure that the team addresses the necessary questions to the two professors. We will also share the slides with you, and Bandhu, thank you so very much as well for all of the efforts that you have put in and everything that you have helped us with to arrange today. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for signing on today. It was a pleasure to have you online with us. If there is anything else, you are more than welcome to contact us. Have a great day.